Welcome back, huh?
I stopped dancing before the keyboard again.
Well, we'll just have to have background music going if we want to keep dancing while we're there. But
Yeah.
no, we gotta create our own intro. But anyways, welcome back everybody to U.S. Wealth Live or Military Finance 2.0. We were just kind of talking about before the show, what it is. I mean, obviously, we're starting this stuff out. We're putting it out. Hey, we want to teach basics, but in a more modern way. Because the conversation we had earlier today with some clients was about this concept of financial literacy and the standard that it's like everything in the military, there's a standard. So the assumption is when you talk about financial education or financial literacy, that there's one blanket thing that everybody needs to know while they're on active duty. Otherwise they're screwed. It's like that's one way. It's a small box of thinking about it, and of course it's good to start there, but in this day and age we got to start thinking a little broader. So while in these first episodes we're getting to the basics and stuff, we think we add a perspective of thinking about these things in a different way. Um so with that in mind, what's today's topic?
Well, it's fun. I want to hit on this before we talk about the
Sure.
topic because, and you don't realize this while you're still in, but you're kind of not really in the real world while you're still in the military. And
No,
it took me. Yeah,
we're
people don't
actually, I mean,
realize that.
we're actually in a socialist organization, which I always
Why?
found funny when I figured that out later. It's like, weren't we fighting against communism? Wasn't that the whole American military system for decades and decades? And yet, a military has to be communist, essentially.
I don't even dive that deep into it. I know that, like, you're not really in the real world yet in the military, and that's, I mean, you're in this environment where you have this intrusive leadership because you're taking young people away from everything that they've ever known, and there's very strict controls on everything that you do, what you can do, what you can't do. And it's weird, some of the things that we talk about, and today is really kind of one of them, but I think it's something that people need to know about after they get out of the military because it's something that absolutely applies to them, right? Today we're going to talk about disability insurance. And again, yeah, while you're active duty, not really that big of a concern, right? Because if I get hurt, I can't do my job. What do I do? I get farmed out to go pass out basketballs at the gym, and I'm still getting paid the same amount of money no matter what.
Or you get a military retirement.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
not going to get a full salary. It's not going to replace income, but it's still something, right?
yeah, if it's bad enough. But, something that a lot of people don't understand is once you leave the military and you can't work, you don't get paid unless you have your pension and VA disability, which I do, which is nice. Part of that, though, is you have to make sure that, will that maintain my standard of living? If I get hurt and I can't work, can I still pay all my bills with just my disability and salary? Some people can. And you look at some of these folks that do 30 years, these E9s and O6s, and they're making over $100,000 between their pension and disability. If you're an E6 retiring at 20 years and you get 30% disability, that's not the case for you. So really, disability insurance, what it does is it protects your income stream in the event that you can't work. And I say protect, it protects a portion of your income stream. Typically, disability insurance, most of these policies cover 60 to 75% of whatever your income was at your job. Now, there's a lot of different types we'll dive into, but the problem with that is like, hey, I can't work, I can't pay bills. What am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's another piece of something that we talk about all the time: having multiple income streams. For me, if one thing doesn't work out, hopefully my other two or three things will work out for me.
Yeah, I mean, and anytime you're saying insurance in replacing income type of insurance, whether it's health or taking care of a specific cost, the best way to think of it is backup. I think the problem is it's taught, again, in the traditional financial literacy sense, it's taught as oh, don't worry, you'll get all that, and it'll just take care of everything for you. You should feel comfortable for it. It's like, wouldn't it be better if you could have those other streams of income to also act as a disability insurance, instead of only relying on the one thing? I mean, because who knows? Remember, you might have. I mean, what is the thing people complain about when they're trying to get their rebates from their insurance companies? Insurance companies are always fighting them and stuff. So those are things to consider as well. That they may not pay out if they find a loophole in whatever your claim is.
Yeah, so that's a good point because there's different definitions of what disability actually means.
Hmm.
You have the more restrictive the definition, probably the harder it is to be able to file a claim. Right? There's any job, there or any occupation. There's your own occupation. What you want is really you want to be able to collect benefits off of that based off of you not being able to perform your own occupation versus any occupation. Because what they could do is they might say, oh, well, you're a, you know, I don't know, insert job here. Oh, you're a welder, but you can't weld right now because both your legs are broken. Well, that's fine. You could still go do some other job, right?
Yeah.
If the definition is any job, and you know, what if you're not trained for anything else?
Mhm.
They're going to say, well, you could still go do something else. You could still, you know, go run a, I don't know, a cashier station at Walmart in a wheelchair or whatever until,
Yeah.
so we're not going to pay you benefits. So you want to look for that own occupation definition. And some of the, I'll tell you one thing that surprised me a long time ago. There's a lot of occupations where it's very difficult to get disability insurance. You know what one is that I was kind of surprised about?
EOD tech?
Well, no, because think about where EOD techs are. They're in the military. I couldn't tell you how many times I was like, oh, I can't, you know, my body's been so banged up I couldn't do. But no, dentists,
Huh. Oh,
dentistry. That's a tough one to get qualified for a disability policy. There's a lot of companies that won't cover a dentist for their own occupation.
interesting. Why?
You know, it's a
I know that
skilled.
I know they used to have like the considered for a while they were considered to have the highest suicide rate amongst all
Yeah.
professions. I don't know if that's still the case. My dentist killed himself. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, it was when I was a kid. I remember, oh, I
well,
guess that's true.
I think it's got to do with a lot of like, you know, being able to operate that stuff, all that machinery right there in close vicinity. My sister's a dentist,
Okay.
and you know, I think about that like how hard would that be if you're holding all these precision tools in somebody's mouth and you know, I don't know, maybe you're an alcoholic or something and got the shakes. You know, it's something where I could see like maybe you strain your back because you're bent over a lot, or you know, you're using these tools. I could see like maybe carpal tunnel or something like that because you have all these tools in there that are vibrating. Tattoo artists, think about like a tattoo artist's hands holding that tattoo gun in their hand the whole time, and that thing's just vibrating all day long. I gotta imagine that takes a toll on your.
I mean, you could slam your fingers in a car door and you can't do your job,
Yeah,
and but then they can't qualify. That's interesting. But
I just
okay,
thought it was weird. Somebody told me that they're like, yeah, dentists are very hard to get qualified for disability policies. Yeah, it was really surprising to me.
okay,
Um,
so yeah, let's dig in a little deeper. So we got employer provided, we got workers' compensation. There's social security. There's government provided. There's social security. So what are some of the things folks should be thinking about?
we need to differentiate a couple of things here. So, workers' compensation is basically like disability insurance for something that happens to you on the job.
Okay.
Um, if I go out and get into a car accident, like, you know, we're going to Busch Gardens or something, and I get into an accident, that's not on the job, right? So, if I can't work because of that, workers' compensation isn't going to pay for that. Now, if my company is, you know, says, hey, we need you to drive this thing to Richmond from here, and I get into a car accident, then technically that's on the job. That would probably be covered by workers' compensation. Um, disability insurance, there are policies out there where that will cover you for things that happen outside of the job. Right. So that's why there's a pretty big distinction between the two of those. Did it happen on the job or off the job? And so, with the employer provided ones, that's where most people get their coverage from. They have like your paid time off. I think some of them, they'll have elimination periods where they'll say, it's 1 to 7 day elimination period, where you can use your sick days before an employer sponsored plan will kick in. And I'll tell you this, there are tons of different plans out there that operate differently. So I'm speaking in general terms right now. So please don't come in here and beat me up all bad I'm not a specialist in disability insurance. I'm knowledgeable about it, but I'm just trying to share some basic kind of wave tops with this.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the employer provided policies will, they'll have provisions in there. You'll have sick days, you'll have vacation, whatever. They may combine all that stuff and say, okay, well, you have to exhaust this first before your short-term or long-term disability kicks in. And that a lot of times that's what they'll do for the elimination period. The elimination period, if you're not familiar with it, it's a certain period of time where you have to not be able to work in order for one of those policies to become effective. Some of them have shorter ones, some of them have longer. I think some of them are like 7 days, some of them are 30 days.
So that sounds kind of like a deductible for like car or homeowners insurance in a way. And
yeah.
And so while with the deductible we talked about in the last episode, typically we're kind of saying like, why not get the bigger deductible so you can free things up? Is that similar where whether or not you're doing the 7-day or the 30-day? What's our argument there? Take the shorter one or the longer one?
So here's the thing. If your employer provides it, get the shortest one you can because they're the one who's paying for it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, depending on the type of plan you have, there's contributory where, there's one where an employer pays all the premiums, and then, there's policies where you can pay the premium. So look at who's paying the premium first. Obviously a shorter, elimination period will probably be higher premiums. Longer elimination periods will have lower premiums. But, you have basically the two main types. Your short term that normally takes you out to 6 months, and that's where the long term would kick in. It goes after 6 months. I've seen a lot of policies that go out to 2, 3, 5 years. There are some that, can go out to age 65 or lifetime. Obviously, if you're going out that far, you're going to be paying a lot for that. And most of those, the ones that go out really far, are probably individual type policies, which I'll talk about later on. So the long term is designed to kick in after the short term. And a lot of the times, they may look at, the reason that it's normally 6 months is because the waiting period to get on Social Security disability is 5 months. That's a 5-month elimination period. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's like, hey, you're never going to be able to work again, right? You can't do any work again. So Social Security disability is normally a lot harder to qualify for than, one of these group plans. But a lot of them, that I've seen, it depends on what the employer wants to pay for. And most of the time what employers want to pay for is they'll say, hey, we'll pay for up to 2 years. But that's designed, again, provides 60 to 75% of your income. So you can still pay the bills, keep the lights on, keep food on the table. They only pay that much because the whole point of that is they want to motivate you to get back to work. Yeah. Think about this. Everybody's been talking about this over the last year. All these restaurants and stuff are having trouble hiring people because these people are collecting $600 a week in unemployment. They're making more money not working than they would have had they gone back to work.
Yeah.
And so that's, the insurance companies have figured that. Imagine that the private sector companies have figured this stuff out a lot faster and better than the government. What a novel concept. But anyways, they know like, hey, we need to make sure that we're not giving people an incentive to not work, right? So it'll give you enough to pay the bills, but hopefully they're motivating you to want to get better, so you can go back and go back to making 100% of your income. Um,
But let me ask you this. So, um, one of the things that I think is overlooked is when you're getting, something from your employer that, oh, they're paying for it, so I don't have to pay for it, versus getting something individual. It's like, well, what would be the reason to maybe not get the employer, or is it even an option to not get the employer versus the individual? Because if you think about it, while the employer's paying for it, if it's going to be a group type policy, that guarantees higher costs, but they're just wrapping it all up because it makes it attractive to recruit and retain employees. But it's a persuasion technique, because really that's just coming out of your salary, your potential salary that you can negotiate for if you've self-insured in some capacity. Yeah.
uh, I could see
I mean, it could.
situations.
I mean, it depends on
I don't.
if you have the negotiation power, but that's the difference of being in this mindset. You need to go to a place with the big benefits packages. Like, that is therefore qualified as a good job, versus maybe a smaller, employer that, hey, we can't offer it, but we can pay you more. You know,
Yeah.
those are
Well,
competitive
then you
trade-offs.
can
Or
go
get
out
paid off, or
and
buy your own.
yeah, you can, right? You may pay a little bit more for it, but it's your own, and you can design it how you want it.
Mhm.
So yeah, anytime you get into any kind of group benefits thing, that maybe eliminates a little bit of the choice for you. But at the same time, normally it's there's no qualification criteria for it. It's just that you're an employee and you work there, and you fall under the group, right? So anytime you do this stuff on an individual basis, whether it's life insurance, disability, you have to go out and qualify for it individually. So normally the qualification process, they're looking at you and you alone. Whereas if it's a group process, they're looking at the aggregate, right? And a lot of times with that, it's like, okay, what's the average age of the group? It's funny, like for life insurance, that's what group life policies. Okay, what's the average age of the group? They they don't do individual medical screenings or anything like that. The next time we'll talk about health insurance, and that's an interesting one. I've been working on um, putting some stuff together for a group who does transition training for people, and they said, hey, could you talk about health insurance? And I was like, yeah, I'll dive into that. I'll get into that next week. But today, yeah, the group benefits are easier to qualify for. The premium isn't based off your own individual situation, so that could be an issue too, right? What if you're really healthy and you qualify for a low premium, but you're being lumped in with all these other people? Who knows? I would have to go actually sit down and compare individuals to tell you like whether or not something's a good deal. um, the other one too, like we were talking about earlier, Social Security. That's probably the one that most people think about when they hear the term disability. The people that are collecting Social Security disability, 5-month elimination period. That means that um, you're unable to do any kind of work, and it has to last at least 12 months or all the way out until you die. Um, that one, I mean, it's not a lot. I know some people who have qualified for it, um, but it's not a lot of money. I mean, if you don't have other stuff going on, and they kind of look at that too. They're gonna. I think a lot of. I think it's actually harder to get Social Security disability if you have other assets, things like that you can rely on. But that's kind of the whole point of disability insurance is you don't want to have to go into your assets to start paying your bills if you can't work. If you can't bring in new money, you don't want to start, eating up all of your other assets to pay your bills.
Mhm.
Um, and then you get to the individual ones. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, that was just interesting because I remember having a conversation. I was traveling once and just hanging out at a bar and just chatting with random veterans that happen to be in a military town. and I was talking to a Marine who had gotten back. He had gotten messed up. He was on VA disability, and I was talking about what is he looking to do next, and he said nothing. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Like, why is what's going on? He's like, well, if I get a job, then I lose that extra $1,000 a month. And I'm like, what? Who put you in that mindset? What a criminal thing for them to have done, because there's a misconception on what VA disability is versus this concept of other disability insurance. And it's like great if you can get some help, but the limitations on thinking, well, if I go get a job, then I lose this. It's like, what if the job pays more and has you
No.
feel more fulfilled and has so many other things? It's like that's a crime in my opinion.
So when you're talking about VA disability, completely separate from disability
Yeah,
insurance, right?
we just don't understand that.
It's not, it's provided through the VA. The compensation and all that stuff is from the VA, and that's because of whatever disability you incurred as a result of your service.
Yeah, it's not insurance.
Um,
It's just
yeah.
sorry about that. Here you go.
I think what they're talking about is that there are certain, and I've talked about this on the podcast a couple of different people. We had a VSO on there. We had another guy, Jonna Barker. She was the VSO who talked about it, and then we had Jose Nicola who helped me get my VA claim ready. They talk about that. There are basically three types of 100% on your VA disability claim. You just get 100%. That means you have to go back in there and get reevaluated periodically to make sure that you still deserve that rating. You have 100% permanent and total, which I got, which is, yes, you're 100%. It's never going away. You're not getting any better. You don't have to come back and be reevaluated. And then you have the 100% unemployable, where you basically just maybe you have crippling PTSD or something like that, and you can't get another job. You get some extra compensation on top of that
Okay.
to
Yeah,
basically.
and I think that's good. Of course, I'm not trying to disparage that. I'm just saying, all right, so you can't get a job, you're getting some income to help out. Guess what? And this is what we write about in Veteran Well Secrets. There's other ways to get income and money that aren't tied to a job per se, and maybe
Yeah.
that allowed you to get both. But hey, I know you got to get running soon, so want to hit on these a couple other things. What's the tax treatment of this?
So yeah, some of these payments that you're going to get are going to depend on who made the comp or the contributions. Normally, if your employer pays the premiums on your policy, that whatever income you get is going to be, and this is important. So if you know whether you're getting 60 or 75%, understanding whether it's going to be taxable or non-taxable. If your employer makes the contributions, it's deductible to them, but that income is going to be taxable to you. And then if you're paying your own way, a lot of the time, because you're paying with after tax dollars, that income will be non-taxable to you. It's just
Huh. I didn't
people.
I didn't know disability insurance, because VA disability is tax free, life insurance is tax
Yep.
free. I mean, think about the trade off there. That's another reason the companies they'll love to offer all those benefits. They get the write off,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, the benefit, you're paying the tax man. That's interesting. Hmm.
Yep.
It's coming out of what could have been your salary. They get the write off. So think about that when we're thinking about employer employee situations, folks.
Yeah. And the individual stuff, we talked about that before. Normally, those are harder to qualify for because it's based on you as an individual, what you do. Whether you're trying to get versus like, hey, I can't do my job versus I can't do any job. So there's a lot to consider there. But the thing about this is once you get out, uh, you really need to sit down with somebody and say, hey, what is your plan if you can't work? Right. And that's a scenario that I run people through with, like when we do the asset map tool, I run them through that and be like, hey, here's what happens. Because I said, again, what's your plan for when things don't go according to plan?
No, I love it. Well, cool, man. Well, no, I think there's a great topic to hit on. And if you do want to get an asset map consultation, hit us up at US Vet Wealth. We're revamping the website, or you can email me or Trevor, Scott, or Trevor at usvetwealth.com, and we can run through this stuff with you in more detail. And while we can one do the asset map and think about, how do you use the insurance aspect of it to replace income? The bigger picture, what we're doing at US Vet Wealth is how do you create value for others so you control the source of your income and eventually not have to worry about any of this other stuff. That should be the goal, I think, in America, in the internet age, for any veteran who has so much going for us, with so much opportunity. The more that we can even work together as teams to take care of each other versus relying on some of these convoluted and expensive programs, as much as possible. Create more freedom, liberty, all those things we look to defend. But awesome, man. Well, no, we'll look forward to next topics next week. And for everybody joining us, please subscribe and share the show. We hit 300 subscribers on the channel already, so very excited about that. In our goal to reach, I'll say 1,000. I really want to get to 1,000. So help us get there. Get this into this content to the people who need to hear it. But all right, everyone, we will see you next week.
Take care.
Cheers.